Welcome to the official Heisman Trophy podcast.
Chuck Conrad with a kickoff. Roy is a strong leg, end over end. Sanders takes it 1 yard deep in the end zone. Up the middle of 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. He's at the 40, he's at 45, 50, 45, 40, 35, 30, 45, 40, 50, 10, 5, touchdown. Just like last year, the same story.
Here's your host, Chris Houston.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Heisman Trophy podcast. We have a very special episode this week. We are going to talk to 2000 Heisman Trophy winner Chris Weinke of Florida State on the 25th anniversary of his Heisman Trophy winning season. Can you believe it's been 25 years since Weinke won the Heisman? Depending on how you look at it, it was either the last Heisman Trophy of the last century or the first Heisman Trophy of this century. Whatever the case, Weinke's Heisman win served as a capstone for that great Florida State dynasty under Bobby Bowden. It also helped finish off just a remarkable decade for that program. 2 national championships, 2 Heisman trophies, 11 wins every year going back to 1987. Most likely a level of dominance that we're not going to see again. Of course, that 2000 season was also the focal point for a little bit of a curiosity when it comes to Heisman Trophy trivia, as Chris Weinke was 28 years old and the oldest player to win the Heisman. And what happened was he had left Florida State as a freshman way back in 1990, and he ended up playing minor league baseball for several seasons before coming back to Tallahassee. With Weinke as quarterback, the Seminoles went to 3 straight national championship games, won one of them, and in the final year, he threw for 4,167 yards, 33 touchdowns, just a dominant season for the senior from Minneapolis. After we catch up with Weinke, who, by the way, is also the offensive coordinator for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, we will talk to ESPN analyst and former college quarterback Max Browne. We had him on earlier in the season, and we want to go back and recap what we've seen so far in 2025. And now we're getting closer to the moment of truth, folks. On December 1st, Monday, Heisman Trophy ballots will go out to the 928 Heisman electors across the country. They will have 1 week to assess the various Heisman candidates and fill out their ballots, first place, second place, third place. On Monday, December 8th, there will be 4 players who will be announced as Heisman Trophy finalists for 2025. Those 4 players will come to New York to be feted in a way that only the Heisman Trophy can fet someone. And then on Saturday, December 13th, live on ABC, the 2025 Heisman Trophy winner will be announced. And after being given the key to the city, being made a prince of the city for at least one night in downtown Manhattan, the new Heisman Trophy winner will wake up on Sunday morning and be officially welcomed into the Heisman Trophy fraternity at the 2025 Heisman Legends Brunch. Used to be a black-tied gala on Sunday or Monday night. Now we've got a brunch. There are still plenty of tickets available for the Legends Brunch. Be sure to go to Heisman.com. Check out all the information there to try to get your seats. And we'll be right back after these words from Archie Griffin.
This is Archie Griffin, 1974, 1975's Heisman Trophy winner, and you're listening to the official Heisman podcast.
The Heisman is handed out every December, but the history of the trophy lives year-round at Heisman.com. Home to the most iconic trophy in sports, Heisman.com tells the story of all 90 of our winners and features news, bios, and statistics on all your favorite Heisman heroes. Heisman.com also highlights our Heisman humanitarians, the many charities supported by the Heisman Trust, and so much more. Make Heisman.com your first stop for all things Heisman.
Hello, Heisman.
7-year National Football League veteran Chris Weinke is in his 4th year as Georgia Tech's quarterbacks coach, his 3rd year as the Yellow Jackets co-offensive coordinator, and his 2nd year as Tech's assistant head coach. He is also the 2000 Heisman Trophy winner from Florida State. So this year, the Heisman Trophy Trust is honoring Chris in New York City on the 25th anniversary of his Heisman season. Chris, welcome to the Heisman Trophy podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get into some reminiscing, I wanted to ask you about Haynes King, who came on the show a couple weeks ago. He's been so outstanding and seems to get better and better each week. I just wanted to get your impression of King and his progression this year.
Yeah, no, he's been outstanding. I think I'm fortunate to be able to coach a guy like him. He's everything you want in a player. He's the son of a longtime successful high school coach. He's wired the right way. has a high football IQ. He's as tough a guy as I've ever coached. Obviously, his story has been well documented recently, but great leader, the guy that makes this engine go. He's everything that you'd want, and he has continued to get better each and every year. Have a great relationship with him. Recruited him when he was coming out of high school in Texas, and obviously went to A&M, and then made the move here. So he embodies everything, okay, that you would want in terms of a guy that represents your program, represents his name, his family, and quite frankly embodies what I believe truly what the Heisman Trophy stands for.
Wow, that's great commendations there. Haynes told me you guys had a great relationship. And it's interesting to me that you can relate so well to each other, given your very different playing styles. You know, you were a classic pocket passer, and he's a dual threat. How do you, when you're trying to relay lessons, how do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, I think I think there's a lot of foundational things about the quarterback position, whether you're a dual threat or you're a pocket passer, that I truly believe in. And I think one thing that Haynes doesn't get enough credit for is his ability to be able to pass the football. Obviously, he runs over 22 miles an hour. His athleticism shows up every week. His numbers speak for themselves. But I truly believe that we're always trying to find a way to create an advantage when you have a dual threat guy like Haynes and his ability to be able to run the football. Sometimes his passing gets overlooked, but I truly believe that he has honed his skill set in that area. He has gotten better every year. And I look at just the last couple of weeks, the guy's thrown for over 700 yards in 2 weeks. So he has gotten better every week. He obviously is the leader of our football team, and I hope that he continues on this path to finish out this season strong.
Well, credit to you and Haynes for getting that done. You hail from Minneapolis area, the Twin Cities, Creighton-Durham High School. You played football, baseball, and hockey. What lit the spark for you as a young athlete? What drove you to compete in so many sports?
Well, I think it was just growing up in an athletic family. I've got a brother that's a year older. I've got a sister that's 6 years younger. Both my parents were athletes, and I think the competitive side. I always say that when you grow up, what is the environment that you're growing up in? And I was in a competitive environment, especially with a brother that's a year older. And for me, it was always, hey, I'm always trying to compete against my older brother. And then I think just growing up in Minnesota, hockey was my favorite sport. It's the one sport I didn't play professionally, but it was the one thing that I loved to do. And wish I could have played that as well. But that burning desire to just compete, that competitive character, I think I learned at a young age. And it didn't matter what sport I was playing. And I always got in trouble because I had a sister that was 6 years younger. And everybody said, well, you got to let her win sometimes when you're playing some games. And I just never understood that. And I think that's held true throughout my career. I wasn't by any means the most talented guy. I clearly wasn't the fastest guy. I wasn't the strongest guy. But one thing I do take pride in is the fact that I said no one was going to outwork me. And I think a lot of the things that I was able to accomplish was, one, because I was in that environment where I had a brother that was a year older. I learned how to compete. I obviously had to be tough. There was a lot of fights where mom said, hey, you guys settle down. So I learned toughness from him. And then I always felt like, and I share the story, when I started my first day of high school, I never had a day off until I finished my senior year, because I went from football right into hockey, right into baseball, right into summer baseball. Summer baseball was over, and I went right into high school football again. So it's all I knew, it's all I understood, and it's what I truly loved. And I think that has been lost a little bit these days. Kids are trying to hone their skill set in one sport. And I encourage kids to play multiple sports, because I learned a lot of different things playing those three sports.
How do you avoid burnout as a young athlete? Just spreading yourself out like that how did you get through that? Or did you ever have an issue with that at any point?
Yeah, I look back and I never felt like I got burned out. I think it's because I played multiple sports, right? The approach and the mindset of those three sports were totally different. I do think that kids that now just pick one sport can get burned out because you're playing it year round. I had the excitement of going to play high school football and then be able to put those pads away and put the skates on. And that created some excitement for me. And then the hockey season was over and I was able to pull out the bat and glove and go play baseball. So for me, I never got burned out. It was, and the ironic thing is when we did have time off, if it was the winter time, we were out playing hockey outdoors on a pond or in the park. And in the summertime, if we didn't have a game, we had some type of either wiffle ball game or a game in the park going on. So that's all I knew. That's what I loved. And so I never really got burned out.
So when it came time for you to pick your college, you naturally went down to the warmer climates. But why not stay up north? Why not be around the hockey atmosphere that you so loved?
Yeah, it was for me. I was trying to find a place I was going to go play two sports. The original plan was to play football and baseball, and I wanted to find a place that they were going to allow me to do that. I did start to gravitate towards the warmer weather to be able to really throughout the recruiting process go to where I felt like my best opportunity was to be successful in both those sports. Went down there, went through 2-a-days, and then decided to sign a Major League Baseball contract. So I got a little taste of it, and then when I gave up baseball, that was the one place I did want to go back and play football because that football blood was still running through me. And so I've definitely taken the road less traveled, but enjoyed every mile of it.
Well, you were a big Miami fan, right? Because of Steve Walsh coming from Creighton-Durham.
Yeah, so growing up in Minnesota, like high school football is very average, and you don't see a lot of kids coming out of that state going to play big-time college football. And the excitement of watching those games as a kid growing up in Minnesota, having a guy that was 5 years older than me that went to the same high school and had success at Miami and then was playing in the NFL, like he was kind of the trailblazer for quarterbacks up there. And it kind of people started to take notice. And then obviously 10 years after I graduated, Joe Mauer, who was the number one overall pick in the Major League draft, also decided that he was going to go to Florida State until he was the number one pick. So I was a huge Miami fan. I didn't know any better. And then when I made the decision, obviously it was Florida State and truly enjoyed that whole experience. What
was it like being recruited by Bobby Bowden?
The best. I tell people all the time that there's not a better human being. God rest his soul, but he was a great man, first and foremost. He was an unbelievable coach. He treated people with respect. He treated every single player fairly, but not equally. And he made that very clear. He says you get what you deserve or what you earn, and had a great relationship with him. Coach Bowden was a huge golfer. He would never play golf with me while I was still in college. And then once I finished college, one of our favorite things was to go play golf. And so one of the toughest days of my life was the day that I had to go to his funeral. And that was tough, but I had a great relationship with him. I want to tell one story about Coach Bowden. I went down there, went through 2-a-days, and decided to leave and go play professional baseball. That next December, I got a handwritten Christmas card at home that said, if you ever want to come back and play college football, you've always got a spot here. So that just speaks volumes about the type of human being he was. I really wanted to be a coach because of him. The lessons he taught in life and the way he treated people. You talk about competitive. He was competitive now. So a lot of those things are the reason that I'm coaching today.
Was it a hard decision for you to leave Florida State and go to baseball, or did you just feel like it was just too good of an opportunity and no looking back?
Yeah, it's hard as an 18-year-old kid. You don't really know what you want. And I felt like I went down there, went through 2-a-days, and I was smart enough to look around the room and see that Brad Johnson, Casey Weldon, Charlie Ward, and a couple other guys were there. And I said, I might not see the field for a while. And then the opportunity came up to obviously go play professional baseball. And it was another love of mine. And I felt like I may never get that opportunity again. And I enjoyed every minute of it. But I'll say this, that every time that baseball season was over and the fall rolled around, I surely missed football. And that football blood, like I said, was running through me. And it made a decision after 6 years that that's really what I wanted to do. And that's what my heart was telling me to do. And I don't know what I was thinking, but, I didn't touch football for 7 years. and I decided to go back. And Coach Bowden welcomed me back with open arms, and I'm thankful for that.
I've always wondered, just as what if you had stayed at Florida State the first time, do you think you would have been as successful or done as much as you did later on? Or do you think it just worked out exactly as well as it could have possibly worked out for you?
Yeah, I truly believe things happen for a reason. I know that I was much more prepared and equipped to handle the stresses and pressures that come along with playing big-time college football, especially at the quarterback position, as an older guy than I was an 18-year-old. I learned a lot of life lessons while I was playing professional baseball. I grew up, I matured, and I just felt like I was probably in a better position to handle those things when I went back. Now, I was way behind because I hadn't played, and I knew that I had to continue to work to be able to put myself in a position to compete to play. But I also think the mindset was totally different as a 24-year-old than it would have been as an 18-year-old.
Yeah, it's quite an advantage just from the maturity level side of things. Kickoff Classic, A&M, your first start. Got off to a great start. The next week, the Torrey Holt game.
Yeah, that's right.
Welcome to college football, right? What was that like, just being in that, getting thrown into that cauldron that was just the classic 90s Florida State, just the center of college football really at that time? What was it like being around that whole atmosphere?
Yeah, I look back and I say, you talk about dynasties in college football, and we were in the top 14 consecutive years. That's unheard of. And I look back and I say, I went back, and that was a goal and a dream of mine to be the starting quarterback for Coach Bowden at Florida State. And sometimes you have to say, watch out what you wish for. So I put myself in a position, obviously, to, as you alluded to, win the first game against Texas A&M up in New Jersey, and came back. And I think we had a bye week, and we were preparing for NC State. And ironically, I threw a 68 or 69-yard touchdown pass in the first series, and then proceeded to throw 6 interceptions. And so I always say this, as an athlete, you have a defining moment. That was a defining moment for me. I had to make a decision. Was I going to allow the outside noise to affect me? Because as you can imagine, there were plenty of people saying, get that old man out of here. He can't do it. I think I went nearly 300 passes without an interception following that game, and then obviously continued to get better. And fortunately for me, I was surrounded by a lot of good coaches and good players, and Coach Rick pulled me into his office. He was my quarterback coach and the offensive coordinator. He had a picture of every quarterback he's ever coached, and he told me a story about every single one of those guys that went through some type of adversity similar to that. That helped me get over that. And when you go through those things, the only thing you hope for is, hey, can we play the next game right now? Because you want to get that bad taste out of your mouth. And so learn from it, obviously continue to get better, and then we were able to go play in 3 straight national championship games.
Yeah, that had actually been a thing for Florida State quarterbacks. You guys used to play Miami first game of the season in the 80s, and more often than not, that was the great Miami teams. They would win the first game, and then Florida State would come back and have that adversity and just have a great season the rest of the way. And that's, like you said, exactly what happened to you. Compete for 3 straight national titles. You didn't lose again until your senior year after that NC State game. And any one of those teams could have won a national title. One of them did. What was the difference between those 3 teams? What separated them that determined, because one was in the title game, one won the title game, and one lost the title game.
Right.
I guess they're all in the title game, but yeah, it's just interesting that it's a fine line, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt. And that was, the first of the BCS era. And the first one, I had broken my neck in the 10th game of the season against Virginia. I was not able to play in that game against Tennessee in 1998. I was on the sidelines in a neck brace, and that was probably one of the toughest things I ever had to face. I never had a major injury before, but in that 10th game that season in 1998, I took a hit, and the doctors told me I was a centimeter away from being paralyzed from the neck down. So when I look back at that, I'm very thankful. Obviously, they were watching over me. And so that was tough for me. So we lost to Tennessee in that game, obviously came back, preseason number one in 1999. We were the first team in college football history to go wire to wire, go undefeated and win the national championship against Michael Vick and the Virginia Tech Hokies, and then came back our senior year and obviously lost to Miami during the season, but then had an opportunity to come in through the back door to play Oklahoma in the national championship down in Miami. So when you look at those 3 years, there were different variables that came into play. And I think there was adversity in each and every one of those years. We were able to find ways to overcome that adversity. Again, I can't speak for the game I didn't play in, but in '99, obviously we had a great game against Virginia Tech, and then in 2000, we got beat, just flat out got beat. We couldn't do anything offensively. Our top receiver, without making any excuses, wasn't playing in the game. Snoop Minnis, Coach Richt had already accepted the head coaching job at Georgia. So it was a perfect storm. But they played really well. They had a good football team, and we lost. But those experiences of playing in 3 straight national championships, being in the top 4, 14 consecutive years, it was pretty special.
I think you would have won the '98 one if you had been healthy. Pretty sure. And I feel like the Oklahoma one was a little bit of, you guys were just at the intensity of the level you've been playing at for so long. At some point, not that you run out of gas a little bit, I guess, with the motivation, and then you have Oklahoma was kind of on the rise at that point. So it seemed like one of those kinds of situations. The '99 game, but the Vatek championship game, you had a huge game in that one, and I feel like that was really the beginning of your Heisman season in a way. I feel like that game was such a closely watched and widely watched game. Michael Vick's real coming out game, but you guys were the ones who put your foot on their throats at the end and dominated, you and Peter Warwick. And I feel like that was the beginning of, hey, Chris Weinke is going to challenge for the Heisman next year. Was that how it looked like from your perspective as well?
Yeah, I think the when you go through an undefeated season and accomplish the things we're able to accomplish, and as you mentioned, a highly viewed national championship game, I think that was, I'll never forget playing in that game, and it was in New Orleans in the Dome, and it was the star of stars all over the sidelines. It was like, wow, this is crazy. But also when you think about Coach Bowden, right, it was his opportunity to win a national championship. He had never had an undefeated season. The winningest coach in college football history, never had an undefeated season. So it was his opportunity. I think that was the motivation for us as players. We wanted to give him another national championship and an undefeated season. And I think, looking back on that game, it was back and forth. It was, we got out to an early lead, and then it was the Michael Vick show, and they actually went up 29-28 on us. And then obviously the game finished up 46-29. We finished them off late in the game, but our defense played outstanding after he had a little run. And then, but I do think that was kind of the start. Like, people started to notice, like, hey, who is this guy? And then we went into the next season and had some more success. And like I said, I was blessed. I was fortunate. I had some of the best receivers in college football history playing for me, and a really good defense. So I think that is all part of the whole recipe for success, especially winning the Heisman Trophy.
The next season, you just got off to a great start, 318 yards versus BYU, 443 against Georgia Tech. You had some massive games that season, 536 yards against Duke. You had 521 against Clemson, over 4,000 yards passing. Was it just a matter of you being at just the height of your powers, your full maturity, physical, mental, all that kind of thing?
Well, I think it's a great example of there's no substitute for experience, right? Like, I was now going into my 3rd year. And I try to share that with young quarterbacks. Like, we live in this microwave society where we all want everything right now. These high school kids want to sign with you because they say that they want to play right away. They're not ready to play right away. And even though I was older, I wouldn't have been able to be ready to play even when I came back my first year. So, I started my sophomore, junior, and senior year, but I felt like I was at the peak of really my playing time was that 3rd year. I was in the same offense for 3 years. A lot of the same guys were on that team. There's a comfort level knowing that kind of there's an really an unspoken language, right? I'm playing with guys. I look at them. They know exactly what I'm thinking. So I think when you get that opportunity to do that and you do it for 3 consecutive years, we were hitting on all cylinders and we were able to have a lot of success. And so I do believe that was a major part of it. Like I had a lot of reps. I played a lot of football. I put myself in a position just through working hard and through experience to be able to lead that offense and really became kind of a coach on the field. I graduated in 3.5 years and I had to take one class my senior year. I spent a lot of my time up in the office watching film and spending time with Coach Rick. So I was part of the game planning.
Right.
And so it became a lot of fun for me. And that's when I kind of knew that's what I wanted to do down the road, is be a coach.
You were like a colossus back there, Chris. You were just this big dude. And, you embodied the swagger that was the Florida State program back there. Guys would just bounce off you in the pocket. It was incredible. And it looked so effortless. Everything you did looked so effortless back there.
Well, I do take pride in my toughness. I'll say that. That was the hockey player in me. And I felt like, the one thing I think people forget is after I broke my neck, I'm probably the only quarterback that played with a neck roll. They added some protection to the back of my shoulder pad. So it probably looked like I was really bigger than I was. But then people say, well, you couldn't run. And I always share this story that, guys, listen, when you can find somebody that can run faster 40 yards than I can throw it, okay, then I'll start running it. I said, so I just gave it to the guys that could run. I couldn't, but I could get it to them.
Who was the guy at Florida State, the quarterback who was highly touted, but he moved to fullback because
so Dan Kendra,
he had a neck roll too, right?
Yes, Dan Kendra came in and was the number 1 quarterback in the country. Was a year ahead of me. He'd already been there, and we ended up competing in that second spring that I was there, and then he ended up going from 210 pounds to an off-season workout where he came back to camp 265 pounds. The guy leg pressed like 1,200 pounds. Unbelievable athlete, could do the splits.
I remember.
Really, 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 really unique guy. And he became our fullback. So, we had some characters. There's no question about it.
Yeah. What was the point during that season when you thought, hey, I think I might be able to win the Heisman?
People say, oh, you had to be thinking about it. I'm going to be 100% honest. I never thought about it. My singular focus was on, hey, I want to be the best that I can be. I would love nothing more than to win back-to-back national championships. So when that's your focus, okay, and you just want to have success and you're so driven by that, I always said that things would take care of themselves. If awards and accolades come along with that, great. If not, I know that I was going about my business the right way every single day. You start to hear people talk about it, but I was never really focused on it. And quite frankly, still didn't think I was going to win it when I was sitting there in the front row coming out of the commercial break when they were about to announce it. I said, I played in a lot of big games in my life and a lot of different sports. I've never been that nervous in my life. I could remember my foot was shaking. It came out of the commercial break, and I'm sitting there with Drew Brees, LaDainian Tomlinson, and Josh Heupel, and none of us knew who was going to win it. So that was again throughout the course of that year. I never really felt like, hey, that's why I was playing, or I'm going to try to do this to go try to win it. It was never a goal of mine. Obviously, I'm very proud of it. But like I say all the time, every time I talk about this award, it's a reflection of not only my performance, but the coaches and the players around me.
Well, that was at the Downtown Athletic Club. That was the last time the ceremony was at the Downtown Athletic Club, I believe, because after that there was 9/11 and they had to move it. What was your experience like when you got called? You said you were nervous before the announcement. Was it like this relief? Was the pressure relieved? And did you go up there and have an idea what you were going to say? What was your plan?
Yeah, it was surreal. When you walked into the old Downtown Athletic Club, that place was special. As a kid, growing up, and you see the old brown walls with all the portraits of the former winners, you're like, as a kid, you're saying, yeah, man, I'd love to win that someday. Hey, I'm going to win the Heisman. You're playing catch in the backyard. You're saying, hey, I'm going to. Now, did you ever think that would really be a reality? Probably not. But I'll never forget the first time I walked into that room, because it looked so different on TV than it really was in real life. And I walked in that room, and it's almost like you got chills walking in that room. All the portraits hanging on the wall, just very, very, very kind of tight. Felt like the ceilings were low. It was crazy. And all I really thought about was the history in that room, the people that have walked through there, and that award that's been given out to so many special people. Like that was probably one of the most memorable times of my career.
You won the Heisman at a time when there was still a lot of great legends of the Heisman who were still alive back then. Who are some guys you met at that weekend that kind of stuck in your head?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the Rodgers, Jay Burwanger we used to have a private Sunday night Heisman kind of ordeal where no one else was allowed to go to it. And it used to be down in the Battery, and it was no outsiders and just us. And that was the one time, you got to be able to spend time with everybody, cut loose, have some fun, have dinner, have a few drinks. And guys like Steve Spurrier, nobody knows this, but the guy's dancing all the time. Like it was his favorite time to go dance on the dance floor. Jay Burwanger, the Rodgers, like I said, I'm trying to think, just so many guys that the older guys, when you start to think about the history of this thing, and I didn't say a whole lot at these events. I kind of just sat back and took it all in. And felt like, man, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. And so hadn't been back in a while. Look forward to getting back up to New York this year and celebrating the 25th. I can't believe it's been 25 years. And I'm hoping that that kid that I coach every day is going to have a seat at the table up there this year.
Certainly possible if he keeps playing like he's playing. Finally, I just want to ask you, what has the Heisman meant to you as far as changing your life, as far as opening opportunities? What when you reflect on it?
Yeah, and they tell you the night you win it that forever your life will be changed, and you don't recognize that while it's going on because you're taking everything in, and every year that goes by, it becomes more special. I think anytime you're announced to speak someplace or someone introduces you, it's not just your name; it's followed by 2000 Heisman Trophy winner, and that's special. And I'll carry that with me. I'm proud of it. Not too shy to say that I earned it. I worked hard for it. But there's a lot of people that helped me get that award. And so it's special. It's going to be special. It's something that they can't take away from me. And I take great pride in that. And I do think that when you look at the landscape of sports across the globe, it is the most special individual award, and I'm lucky to have one.
Well, I've been trying to talk to the other member of the Florida State 1990 quarterback recruiting class for a while. I've talked to Charlie Ward. Finally got to talk to Chris Weinke. Thank you so much for coming on the Heisman Trophy podcast. We're looking forward to seeing you in New York City in December, and congratulations on a great season with the Yellow Jackets, and we will see you in New York.
Thanks so much for having me.
Hey guys, this is Barry Sanders, the 1988 Heisman Trophy winner, and you are listening to the official Heisman Trophy podcast.
Did you know that the Heisman Trophy Trust has donated more than $20 million to a huge variety of charity-based groups via its Heisman Trophy Fund for Youth Development? That's right, the fund has helped countless charitable organizations that uses sports to engage underprivileged young people in educational activities. If you are part of an organization or know of one that would like to apply for funding, visit Heisman.com and click on the charities link at the top of the site.
Max Browne is a former college quarterback and analyst for ESPN, and he runs a very popular, informative, and entertaining YouTube channel. And he's joining us for the second time this year on the Heisman Trophy podcast. Welcome, Max.
It's great to be back, Chris. Thanks for having me.
To start out, you just helped call last weekend's Cal-Stanford game, won by the Cardinal 31-10, and now Justin Wilcox has been fired. You were around the program for a few days last week. Who do you think the Bears will look at to replace him?
Yeah, I was surprised Wilcox was let go. I thought, I wasn't naive to the realities of the situation he was in, but the storyline heading into that game was hey, Cal beats their rival, and then if they can finish off versus SMU, there was a world where they had 8 wins, and that was the most in the Wilcox era, which is maybe part of the problem with this, in that, Cal's unique in that they've never bottomed out. They've consistently been just a average football team, and average has a negative connotation, but like a lot of these other teams, especially in the ACC, under Wilcox, they never bottomed out, and Wilcox had to deal with so much during his tenure there, from pandemic to conference change to NIL and trying to get a fan base to support him more financially and all that. But to answer your direct question, to me, there's one name which is unique for Cal that I think is other fan bases are having to. There's not that clear cut one name per se. I guess for LSU and Florida, it might be Lane Kiffin, but for Cal, Tosh Lupoy makes so much sense. I mean, he's the current Oregon defensive coordinator. Before that was Nick Saban's linebacker coach, and I believe defensive coordinator at Alabama. I know when I played Alabama in 2016, I believe that was his title. He recruited me when I was in high school when he was at Cal, and that's how he made his money, was a big-time recruiter there. And then Sark poached him to Washington, and then his career took off from there. But he went to De La Salle High School, went to Cal. Like, if Tosh is ever going to make the jump to be a head coach, I think it'd be a home run hire for Cal. And I think there's a world where Tosh could even potentially get a more high-profile job if he wanted to. So, yeah, that's the one name that sticks out.
There's an outstanding freshman quarterback at Cal whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce at this moment. Do you think the Bears can keep him? And is that task number one for the incoming coach, just to try to make a run at him to stay in Berkeley?
Without a doubt, Jaren Kiave Songopolatele is going to be
good job.
One of, if not the premier quarterback this offseason in the portal. And I don't think it's not going to be just Cal. It's trying to get after him. And I asked Justin Wilcox last week about that in terms of, I literally said, I was like, Coach, I hate that I have to ask this, but are there plans in place? And what's kind of the month of November been like from a retention standpoint for JKS? And his line to me was, this has been going on since fall camp. Like, they knew they had something special before the world did, before he got on the TV screen. And so that's Ron Rivera's job, right? That's the luxury that Cal has in this transition is, yes, you're getting a new head coach, but you're holding on to Ron Rivera. And from what I understand, like, that is his lane. That's why you hire a Ron Rivera. So yeah, whoever the next head coach is, keeping JKS, he is that special. I mean, for a true freshman quarterback, he's that special. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of teams, especially from the Power 2 conferences, that are going to be trying to get him for, I don't think $5 million in a single year is out of range for JKS.
Quite the run for Cal. JKS, Fernando Mendoza, back-to-back years, probably, both future first-round picks. Pretty amazing evaluation efforts on Cal's part. Look, the whole regular season is coming to a close. Looking at the big picture, what for you has been the biggest surprise in the sport this year?
Biggest surprise? That's a good question. Right away, I think the whole LSU scenario. LSU was my national championship pick before the year started. I thought Garrett Nussmeier was the best quarterback returning in college football. I was believing, hey, Brian Kelly, year 4, the jump that could be there, all they got in the portal, especially after week 1, too, with the win that we thought was a huge win at Clemson. So a little pinpointed, but yeah, LSU's trajectory is the most surprising. And then obviously they're in every headline this week with, hey, what's Lane Kiffin going to do? And I'm intrigued to see what they do if Kiffin stays at Ole Miss, because I do think from a brand name perspective, the coaching market doesn't have those premier hot names, which means some of these schools are going to have to get either creative or take a chance on a true kind of lower level head coach and give them the keys to a big boy program. But yeah, LSU, the whole storyline there is the most intriguing thing to me, or surprising thing.
I'm going to loop back around to Kiffin in a second, but have you noticed any trends this year that might be developing in a sport that just seems to be evolving every year?
It's a good question. I'll go super technical with that. And those that follow my content know I watch a lot of film and a lot of film breakdown. I'm fascinated by the intermediate passing game. And here's what I mean by that. I think offenses are dead, or offensive scheme is dead in college football, in that every offense looks the exact same.
Yes.
Every OC that I meet with, they're all trying to do the same exact stuff for the most part. There's obviously variations here and there. But if you rewind 5-7 years ago, not that long ago, there were distinct offensive systems that, hey, coaches were going into. And I think it's a byproduct of a new generation getting into college football. And, you're kind of molding the best from air raid passing attack and best from NFL pro style run game and kind of meshing it all together. But I bring up intermediate passing game in that I have found that a lot of the offenses do just RPOs and then shots down the field. So it's run pass option kind of thing, and then shots down the field. But the best teams have an intermediate passing game, which was mainstream when I played. I'm talking digs. I'm talking 10-yard outs. I'm talking comebacks consistently over routes. The teams that are average offensively, to me, don't have that. It's just RPOs and shots. Yeah. The more elevated offenses have a full-fledged progression passing, intermediate passing game, which is something I'm tracking and trying to work on a YouTube video as well and bring some metrics and stats behind it. But that's one thing that's top of mind for me.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. For me, the most noteworthy thing has been exactly that. There's been a gradual drop-off in offensive production. There's not a single Power 4 team that is averaging 500 yards of offense per game. Here's a stat for you. The last team to lead the nation in total offense per game at fewer than 500 yards was 1987 Oklahoma.
Wow.
And like you said, these offensive systems have become more homogenous. They've kind of rounded out a bit. There's very few sharp edges. Almost everyone runs this version of the same offense. And have you noticed that we're seeing this return of double tight ends and H-backs and fullbacks? We're going back in the phone booth. I know some people have cited the new clock rules, but I'm not sure that tells the whole story. Why do you think that we're seeing this homogenization and this kind of sameness being spread out across college football?
Yeah, it's a great point. And it's funny that 12 personnel, I've noticed it. Sean McVay, ever since obviously the Rams are rolling, and Sean McVay, ever since Puka Nacua went down, went heavy into 12 and 13 personnel, and the stats there, check them out. It's literally black and white before and after. And then you look at, I literally was talking with the ESPN research department last week of all right, who are the best teams in college football that are doing that? And Ohio State's right up there. Texas A&M's right up there in terms of usage of 12 and 13 personnel, 2 and 3 tight ends, to your point. USC's up there too, and their offense, I know the team's not doing well, but the offense is playing great. Yeah, I think it's the natural, cat and mouse and evolution of coordinators. And what I mean by that is, I think 10 years ago, it was still defenses trying to catch up with the spacing and the tempo and all that. And then nowadays you see defenses, very, very rarely do I call a game for a defense that has 3 linebackers on the field all 3 downs. Usually it's 2, and then a third safety is the nickel body. That's mainstream now. So I think offense is caught up to the defense is caught up to the athleticism a little bit. And then now the offense's counter there is, how can we get a second tight end on the field to then take advantage of the fact that you're taking defensively a linebacker off the field and putting a safety on the field. And it's the natural ebb and flow. And as kids of this generation get a little bit more athletic, I think tight ends, that's a dual capability position where you're big, strong, athletic, and can run as well. And those guys are, I don't know if they're easier to find, but maybe just out there and more visible than they were a decade ago.
Yeah, I feel like you could shake a tree and find a lot of guys who are in that range where they're either a big receiver or a small tight end. And it seems like you said, the counter to this, the kind of the chess move counter to having a Caleb Downs hybrid, safety linebacker who, which was used to counter all those spread attacks, right?
Totally. And one interesting point, just one last thing on this, and I'm coming off of just calling Stanford and Andrew Luck's program and whatnot. And we were talking about that of hey, what's the future for Stanford football? And they want to get back to heavy personnel groups. We're talking, they're coming into a game with 20 different personnel groups, tons of formations where they're using 6-7 offensive linemen. That's old school Andrew Luck type of football. The interesting point now, though, is with the transfer portal and so much player movement, it's really hard to install that kind of offense in today's day and age versus the spread kind of, hey, what these guys have been running in 7-on-7 leagues forever and more simplistic run schemes and whatnot, less moving pieces with personnel groups and whatnot. That's easier to install in today's day and age. I think the next evolution is whether it's Stanford, whether it's a school like Michigan State getting back to their roots, Wisconsin getting back to their roots, going more old school, doubling down on 12 and 13 personnel, but more to run the ball and then additional offensive linemen as well. Like whatever offense can get back to that to be different than the rest of the world to give themselves a competitive advantage. I think that's coming.
Yeah, it's really interesting development there. It seems like I know that like in a romantic sense, like a lot of coaches, I think, who grew up in a certain period, a lot of people want to go back to these old styles of play in football, right? And it seems like it's only a matter of time before the fullback comes back as well. So look, it's rivalry week this week. We've got Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, Georgia Tech. We got the Egg Bowl, USC, UCLA, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and so on. What underdog in these matchups do you think has the best chance of pulling the upset?
That is a good question. I mean, the whole Mississippi State Egg Bowl thing is fascinating to me, just with all the distractions around Lane Kiffin and what that would mean if Mississippi State went in there and won that game. All three of those games are intriguing to me because if you find a scenario where Michigan beats Ohio State, they have an argument to be in the playoff. They should be in the playoff. A 10-2 team with arguably the best win in the country versus Ohio State, they're in. But if Ole Miss were to lose and then they're 10-2, Vandy beats Tennessee, they're 10-2. There's a scenario where one of these Power 2 programs at 10-2 is on the outside looking in, and that would be chaos, not only in the short term for SEC Big Ten, but I think if that happened, that is not what you want for ACC, Big 12, or Group of 5 moving forward. Because if a 10-2 Big 10 or SEC team gets left off, that'll only allow the conference commissioners to say we got to protect our own and start getting a playoff format where they're saying automatic qualifiers and maybe boxing out the Big 12 and the ACC down the road. So that whole scenario is fascinating to me.
Someone's going to get left out, and someone's going to be very upset about it. This has always been the case in college football, going back to the poll days. Somebody's upset that they weren't voted in. Then you get to the BCS. Someone's upset the computers didn't get them in. Then you get to the 14 playoff, and someone's upset because they're 5th or 6th. And it seems like as we expand the playoff and as we tinker with it, there's always this, like the motive has always seemed to be like, we're going to try to settle this thing. But it never really gets settled, does it?
It never does. And I actually like this format. I know there's a lot of people that don't like the subjectivity piece. I don't mind it. And I've done the mock playoff selection committee, a media member sometimes, get looped into that. I did it in Dallas in September. And I just worry if we go all back to full transparency, I guess I don't mind the transparency, but just data only. I'm not wired that way. I'm a film guy. I'm a watch the tape. Obviously it's important data, but I push back against the people that are data over everything. What's the analytics say? I don't think that's the right way to do it, because I'm old enough to remember the USC, Texas, Auburn year where, Auburn was on the outside looking in and it was like, they're getting screwed and all that. The computers don't have the eye test and the subjectivity. And then now we have that. And then people are complaining, which that's part of the fun. But I worry about going too heavy into analytics and not watching the games,
right,
which is the concern I'd have with the committee now.
Right. Well, we're in a situation now where even if, say, Michigan pulls the upset on Saturday, it's not going to change the equation as far as Ohio State goes, no matter what they're still in. How has the expanded playoff changed the strategies of these teams as far as roster management throughout the season, and as far as really the emphasis that coaches have on games, for example? Like even if they want to win every game, but it's in the NFL, they know they're not going to go 17-0 or whatever it is. They have goals to make the playoffs and have a chance to win at the end. But how do you see these strategies changing?
It's a great question. I think from a roster management standpoint, I get the sense that in November practices are a notch lighter than they would have been when I played, just because, it was kind of a full sprint to Thanksgiving this week. And then once you survive this week, all right, we'll figure out the bowl game and you got 3 weeks to rest. Versus if you're in contention, you're not building for Thanksgiving. You're building, through Thanksgiving into Christmas. You're almost building towards Christmas kind of thing. And so it's a month that you have to orchestrate your roster differently. I think the scheduling piece is very interesting. I've said this a lot from a USC lens, in that if USC didn't have Notre Dame and they scheduled Colorado State instead, the optics around what last week was going into Oregon would have been a one-loss USC team that then loses on the road to Oregon, and then now you're a 2-loss Big Ten team with it again, no Notre Dame, but it would be Illinois and Oregon. The optics around that season, not only from a playoff perspective, but from a fan base and everything, is dramatically different than the 9-3 flavor that USC is currently on. So that I think fans are still adjusting to. And then I notice it, to answer your question directly, coaches in their press conferences, when I played, if you lost one game, you're still holding hope. But it's very much like the sky is fallen kind of thing. And then it's, you can't lose that second one or you're done. Now I sense when you're watching those coaching pressers, it sounds more like an NFL press conference where if the Rams lose next week to a below 500 team, it's this sucks, this is terrible, but we're not completely done. And nowadays with coaches, like you can kind of give yourself 2 losses. And that's what gets back to our earlier point of like, if a 10-2 SEC team were to get left out, that's a whole nother conversation. But there's more of an acceptance of like losing and stubbing your toe 1 week is kind of part of the process, whether or not fans want to hear that or not.
Yeah. And they're talking about expanding the system, not for 26, but maybe beyond to 16 teams or whatever it's going to be. So you're going to see that change again. Right now, teams are kind of aiming for 10-2. I think they'll probably be aiming for 9-3 down the road, right?
I hope the change doesn't happen. I'm against the expansion because right now, I don't feel like the regular season has been impacted at all by the expansion. Like I still think Ohio State, Michigan is still top of mind, still has the same juice. It might be a notch lower simply because the stakes of 10 years ago and what that meant, but still like right now you're still playing for a bye week for the chance to host a playoff game or then go on the road. And there's still incentives to being 1 versus 5 versus 9, like huge incentives in that level. So I still think the college football regular season is phenomenal. You start going into 16 and then you're starting to get into that 9-3. That to me is the fork in the road where we would start to see the college football regular season get impacted. And I'm not in favor of that.
All right, let's go back to Lane Kiffin real quick. You know him from your playing days. You've got some insight at his personality. First, do you think he's going to go to Baton Rouge? And second, is he someone who is capable of settling down in a place like LSU long term? It seems to me that, does he have this end game in mind? It just doesn't seem clear to me. Like, what is this guy's goal?
Yeah, fascinating question. I mean, the Lane Kiffin I played for is a different man than the Lane Kiffin now. I mean, I say this point all the time. When Lane Kiffin was fired at USC, one of, if not the biggest criticism was, does he have the personality chops to manage a big-time program? Now he is literally the figurehead for what it means to have a personality-driven head coach in 2025, which is a total 180. I think it's interesting, though, because, if Kiffin was maybe 5 years older, 7 years older, he might be in the mindset of, hey, I got like one last stop and let me try to, build a statue at one program and ride off into the sunset. He still is young enough where I think he's still in let's push the envelope mode. Let's see what we can accomplish. Let's see. We have enough runway here where we can like truly build can chase all-time legacy and all that. To me, I do think when push comes to shove, I think he's going to go to LSU. I have no personal insight there, but I just think if you're Lane Kiffin, he has the awareness and he's lived it firsthand where these windows of opportunity where you are the date that everyone wants to take to the dance. It is very rare for this to happen. It's very rare for a top 5. LSU is, no questions asked, a top 5 job in college football. You could make the argument a top 3 job in college football. These windows don't come around often. I think LSU being in the SEC, slower pace of life, I think all that stuff is truthful to Kiffin, and he still can accomplish it there. And I think Kiffin's between a rock and a hard place. Anyone that like knows ball knows that he's not a scumbag for doing this. It's just a byproduct of the college football calendar, and he's doing what a lot of these coaches would do. Just his history is obviously complicated, which then muddies this whole situation of he obviously left Tennessee for USC in ugly terms. But that is the one factor I do think, if in the back of his mind, I do think it's genuine in that he doesn't want to have that Tennessee to USC chapter and backlash again, but it might just be inevitable given the scenario he unfortunately finds himself in.
Yeah, you mentioned his personality changing. It seems to me that he's become more like his dad, Monty, who was quite the character, right?
Yeah, I was around Monty just a little bit, but I just think he's more he's more loose. The air's lighter around him. Like that wasn't necessarily the case at USC. And I think now he's lived through probably what was his worst nightmare, getting fired at USC and having that thing all blow up. And he's like not taking it as seriously. But I wouldn't be surprised, or taking himself as seriously, I should say. I wouldn't be surprised if he stays at Ole Miss. That's for sure. Different era. I mean, it's well documented that, program prestige is not as important of a factor as it was 10 years ago. The most important factor is, are your boosters donating money? And if Ole Miss, by all accounts, has that money, so he certainly can win at the highest level there.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little Heisman now. There are 4 spots available for Heisman finalists. It seems like Fernando Mendoza and Julian Sayin likely have locked down a couple of the spots. Who do you think are the best bets to get the other 2 spots to New York?
Other 2 spots, I like Marcel Reed, and then I like Diego Pavia to get that 3rd and 4th spot. And then after that, to me, there's a significant drop. Right now, I'm in the camp that it's very much Fernando Mendoza's to lose there. But I do think Marcel Reed, and the story that A&M has been this year, people forget, but Reed had a little bit of a Heisman moment there in the 4th quarter versus Notre Dame, that game-winning touchdown in the 4th quarter. That, to me, is noteworthy there. And then LSU, obviously that LSU has gotten worse since the A&M loss. But what he did on a national stage with his legs and big-time playing there, I think Reed deserves an invite. And then Pavia, the story, well documented. To me, the most impressive part is he backed it all up. Like I kind of thought last year was a one-hit wonder, and man, it's going to be hard to do that 2 years in a row just because Vandy's not going to sneak up on anybody. Pavia's not going to sneak up on anybody. And he's backed it up, and Vandy's a hell of a story. I think Pavia deserves an invite.
If Indiana and Ohio State take care of business Saturday, they will meet again the following week in the Big Ten title game, Mendoza versus Sayin. Do you think that game could determine the Heisman winner?
I think it could. I don't think it should, though. I mean, to me, what's working against Julian Sayin, and if I was a Heisman voter, why I would not vote for Julian Sayin, is he was eased into this year. And to me, if you're winning the Heisman Trophy, you shouldn't have a ease-in chapter. Like all of September, that offense very much had training wheels on Julian Sayin. And it was right for that team, and it was right for Julian Sayin's development as a quarterback, but it's not right to win the Heisman Trophy. And you look at just how they were playing, it was very, let's ease our young quarterback into the season. Versus for Mendoza, it's go time from the jump. For Pavia, go time from the jump. Marcel Reed, same exact thing. So that's my stance. It reminds me of, like when Steph Curry had Kevin Durant on his team, like right away, I'm thinking Steph Curry should never win the MVP. That's just the reality of the Warriors situation there. For Julian Sayin, you got 2 potentially first-round NFL receivers, arguably the best, most talented player in college football right next to you. Julian Sayin's a great quarterback, but I think those factors work against him in 2025.
And also, he's a redshirt freshman. Voters might think, well, we can vote for him next year. He's coming back for sure, right?
Or they might have like voter fatigue from Ohio State. They won the national title. They always have a great quarterback. Hey, Mendoza, Pavia, Marcel Reed. We haven't had. I mean, I won't put Reed in that family as much. But the Vandy, Indiana story from voters that are like, oh, we don't want another Ohio State or Bama guy in this conversation. I think that could work against Sayin.
Of course, if either Mendoza or Reed, or not Reed, but Pavia were to win, that'd be the first Heisman for those schools. But looking ahead at next year, which teams are best positioned to make a run at things in 26, do you think?
Oh, baby. It'll all come down to portal, obviously, and who can land, big-time quarterbacks. I mean, I couldn't even give you a straight answer because of how mobile the portal's going to be. I mean, I do think teams like Ole Miss, teams like Texas Tech, I think their investment is not going anywhere. USC, if Maava was able to come back, I think is interesting. Oregon's not going anywhere. But yeah, I mean, you got to follow the player movement. And what's most intriguing to me is teams like a Florida or team like a Auburn or team like a LSU that says, man, we're sick and tired of being on the outside looking in, and they get a booster who's got a chip on their shoulder to say, hey, let's go get Jared and Kiave Sagapolatele, and let's go get the best tackle and right tackle in the college football. And because of the recent frustration, then they double down on NIL and kind of come out of nowhere? Those ones are always intriguing to me.
Well, Max Browne, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate your insight. Everyone out there, be sure to check out his YouTube channel. Great stuff there. He'll be calling North Carolina and NC State this weekend. Going to talk to Belichick soon, aren't you?
Yeah, just before my Thanksgiving dinner with my in-laws. It'll be fun. It's been a tough season for Bill, but we'll see if we can get something out of him.
Awesome. Max Browne, one of the rising analysts in broadcasting today. Happy Thanksgiving, Max.
Thanks, Chris. Happy Thanksgiving.
All right. I don't know about you guys, but I am ready for some Thanksgiving turkey. Sitting back, watching some football. I'm going to make my double layer pumpkin cheesecake. One of the things that I am known for besides Heisman Trophy stuff. Special thanks goes out to Mike Flynn of Georgia Tech for helping set up Coach Weinke. Thanks to my man, Max Browne. Do me a solid. Like, subscribe, review, comment. Tell a friend, tell your family about the Heisman Trophy podcast. Next week's show, yet another legend, Larry Fitzgerald. Happy Thanksgiving. The Heisman Trophy podcast streams every Wednesday during the college football season and is hosted, produced, edited, and engineered by Chris Houston. The pod is available on all streaming networks, including Spotify and Apple Music, and features video interviews and bonus content on YouTube and TikTok. We also have a Reddit community. Special shout out to Isaac Lowenkron, and big thanks to Rob Whalen, Tim Henning, and the Heisman Trust for their support. Reach out to us via email at pod@heisman.com for feedback and commentary.